This is one of a series of tutorials related to the Poplog system and its editor VED. This particular tutorial explains how you can use function keys available on a standard PC keyboard, or in some cases on a thin client X terminal or other machine. The actual function keys available may vary from one machine to another, and usually they can be programmed to perform the sorts of functions that will be demonstrated here. But for now I will assume you have a standard PC keyboard. This file can be found online in the Poplog directory listed here, and it's called vedxterm keys. It's also part of the Poplog system within the documentation help directory. There are two additional files, one of which is a JPEG file and the other a PDF file showing the diagrams, and I will use the PDF file during this tutorial. A previous tutorial was based on the essential keys teach file, which showed what you can do with the editor if you don't have function keys working, or if you're using a primitive keyboard without the standard function keys. That functionality is provided much more conveniently if you do have the function keys. I'm now going to bring in a PDF file which shows what you can do with the function keys, and I will start with just the top row of function keys, which are usually labeled F1 up to F12. These can be used either on their own, and what they do is shown on this line where it says just key. So if you press the key F1, that will mark the start of a range. If you press the key F2, that will mark the end of a range. And I'll show in a minute what that means. When you have marked a range, there are various things you can do with that range, like copying it, or compiling it, or formatting it, or deleting it. Now, if you, instead of just using the function key, for instance F1, which says where the marked range should start, if you precede it with the escape key, so that has here esc plus key, meaning press escape and then the function key, then you get different effects. So for instance, if you have escape F1, that means that you should mark the file from at the top of the file as the beginning of the range. And if you press escape and F2, that means mark the end of the file as the end of the range. So that will mean that if you press escape F1, escape F2, then the whole file will be marked. You might want to do that because you want to delete the whole contents of the file, or you might want to copy it somewhere, or you might want to compile it or format it, or do something else that you can do with the marked range. The next group of function keys, three of them, are concerned with deleting a whole or part of a line. So F4, which is used a lot, will delete the whole line that the VED cursor is on. F3 will delete a part of a line, namely to the left of the cursor. F5 will delete a part of the line, namely to the right of the cursor. And F6 and F7 will delete a word at a time. F6 the word to the left, F7 a word to the right. You can also precede these delete keys with the escape key, and in the case of F4, if you precede it with escape, then it will just reinsert the last whole line that was deleted. If you precede one of the other delete function keys with escape, so escape F3, F5, F6 or F7, it'll just reinsert the last part of a line that was deleted. These functions can be reprogrammed because the editor is all written in POP11, and the function key commands that are obeyed are all defined in POP11. So if you want to do something different, you can, but these are the defaults. Now I'm going to move this out of the way and demonstrate some of those things. I'll go to a file called teach poem, which just has some junk in it from the Ancient Mariner. So if I can use the arrow keys to move the editor cursor up and down as I'm doing now, and I can press the F1 key. That means that the line where the cursor is now becomes the first line of the marked range. If I go down a few lines and press F2, that means that becomes the end of the marked range. If I go further down and press F2 again, that will extend the marked range. If I go up and press F1, that means the range will now start from where that cursor is. If I go down to that point and press F2, that means that's where the range will end if I press F2 now. So F1 and F2 are very useful for marking the beginning or end of a range. If you don't have the function keys, then as the previous tutorial showed, you can use escape lowercase m to mark the beginning and escape uppercase m to mark the end. But it's simpler just to be able to press a function key, F1 or F2. I said that F4 would delete the whole of a line. So I'm now going to press F4 with the cursor on this line where you can see it moving, and that has gone. If I go to another place and press escape F4, it brings it back, but in that new location. If I do it again, escape F4, it brings another copy. So I now have several copies of that file, which has a typo on it, which I've just noticed. It should have said it is an Ancient Mariner rather than an Ancient Marine, but never mind. So F4 deletes the whole of the line, and escape F4 brings it back. If I put the cursor in the middle of a line, I can type F3, and that'll delete the left hand portion of the line to the left of where the cursor is, and my cursor is there moving. So if I press F3, it deleted everything to the left of the cursor and shifted the rest of the line to the beginning. If I type escape F3, it brings it back. If I type escape F3 again, it brings it back again. So rather pointless in that case, but that just shows that just as you can reinsert the whole of a line that's been deleted, you can also reinsert a part of a line. F3 then deletes line to the left, F4 deletes the whole line, and if I do F5, it'll delete the bit of the line to the right of this cursor. So I'll press F5 and the stuff to the right is gone. F6 and F7 delete a word at a time, so I'm going to put this thing next to the word and if I press F6, it'll delete the and in the following space. If I press F6, it then deletes beard. If I press it again, it deletes grey. If I press escape and one of F3, F5, F6, F7, it just reinserts. Sorry, I pressed the wrong key. Escape F6 will reinsert the last thing deleted, the last part line. If I do escape F6 again, it reinserts that word again. So F6 deletes the word to the left, as I now do 3 times. It treated that back quote as one word, so there's a fourth time and the long goes. On the other hand, F7 deletes the word to the right, so glittering should go. Glittering, now now the comma, and then if I press it again, it goes to the next line, and if I press it again, it deletes the next word, spurious. So, whereas you can delete lots of characters by holding down the delete key and letting it auto-repeat, you may delete more than you want by holding it down a bit too long. Whereas if you use a word at a time with F6 or F7, you can do more accurate deletion.